Hello guys, welcome back to the channel, and if this is your first time here, welcome. So last year I started a video series for those who wanna get into building their first model car. But it has been over a year now and I realized I only have 2 videos posted in that series. So I guess it's time to start it back up again. But I was thinking, instead of making a long video which can be overwhelming, I have decided to break it down into different clips. That way it's easier to digest, I guess. If you have watched my previous build, you know I have clearly broken down a full build into different steps. Basically, building a model car consists of 3 parts: preparing part, painting the part, and the assembly. In this video, I'm going to talk about preparing the part, specifically preparing the body for paint. So if you are a complete beginner and you just bought your first kit, then this video might be helpful to you. By the way, if you haven't done so, I have 2 videos I think you should watch before considering buying your first model car kit. As for tools and accessories, I know if you are new to the hobby, you probably don't want to spend a lot of money on tools and paints. But I promise you, you don't need fancy or expensive tools, just the basic ones will be necessary. I will be focusing on the basics here, so if you are an experienced builder, you might find this a little boring. Anyway, let's get started. So right here I have a kit from Hasegawa. It's a Honda Civic SIR2 in 1/24 scale. If Japanese tuner cars is your thing, then both Fujimi and Aoshima will have plenty of good ones for you to choose from. If you are into stock Japanese cars or race cars like the one with tons of stickers, then Tamiya and Hasegawa will be your first choice. They make pretty high quality kits. If you like American cars, you might want to look into AMT or Revell. On the front of the instruction, you will find the paint codes. If you happen to have a Tamiya kit, then these codes will be totally different. Don't worry about the paint for now, we're gonna talk about it in the next episode when we get to painting. The instructions give you a pretty clear breakdown of the entire model. The color codes to every part are also clearly marked, so you know what colors you need to paint them. This step-by-step guide is extremely helpful and I use it mostly for the correct order of installation. I don't follow the paint guide as much now because I have my own color choice, but when I first started I was following the instructions 100%, and if that's what you like to do, there is nothing wrong with that. One thing that drives people away from making these model car kits is painting. Unfortunately, that is something you have to consider before getting into the hobby. But again, for your first kit, you really don't need a lot to start. I do suggest getting a simple kit like the one I have, so you can finish the project. At the same time, you can slowly build up your confidence. Obviously, the first thing you want to do is to take the parts out of the plastic wraps. You want to check to see if there are any broken parts or missing parts. Many times during shipping, these A-pillars will break because, as you can see, they are very fragile. Luckily, this kit is in good shape. All the parts are hanging on the sprues and runners. They are properly lettered and numbered, so it's easy to find what the instruction calls for. Clear parts include some lenses as well as the entire window piece. You can leave them in the plastic bags until you need to use them to avoid using plastic bags. To avoid using plastic bags. Yes, do that. Avoid using plastic bags. You can leave them in the plastic bags until you need to use them to avoid putting scratches on them. These rubber tires have some minor mold lines, but you can remove them very easily. There are only a few water slide decals which we can apply later. Now it's time to introduce the first tool you need. To cut the part of the plastic trees, you will need a pair of side cutters. For model cars, you don't need those super thin cutters like the one made by God Hand. The one I've been using here only costs like $4 and it does the job. When cutting a part, it's better to leave a little bit of plastic instead of cutting too close to the actual part. That way you don't accidentally damage the part by cutting too close to it or sometimes cutting into it. Although I don't always follow that rule, after you cut it off, you can then clean the excessive plastic that is sticking out afterward, usually with a sanding stick. You may be wondering, why do I cut off the parts at once? I cut them off at once because there are simply not many parts. If you can correctly name the parts, you will most likely know where they belong, and cutting them off allows me to clean off the stretch marks completely. I understand if this is my first time building a gunpla or a battleship, I wouldn't want to cut off everything at once. But a car kit like this is super simple. This particular kit has no engine part, but even if it does, you will probably have one small extra sprue. Just make sure not to lose any tiny bits and pieces. You'll be fine. When using the cutters, it's important to pay attention to the small and thin parts. For instance, these windshield wipers are very thin, so I switched to a thinner side cutters to avoid applying too much stress to the part, because the distortion created when cutting with a thicker cutters will easily bend and break them off. After cutting off all of the parts, just put them back in a box so you don't lose any of them. Now it's time to take a closer look at the body. First thing you will notice is that the shell is molded in white plastic. Under some strong lightings, it's so reflective it's hard to see the flaws on the body. So I'm gonna make it less reflective by giving it a coat of gray primer. When you are painting a car, you don't want to hold it with your hands. You can either buy one of these paint stands. This one is made by Tamiya. It's spring-loaded to fit different sizes of bodies. Or if you are an alcoholic, you can use a beer bottle as a stand.
No drinking under 21 though.
Just stick some double-sided tapes on the top end and the shell can go on top of that. The primer I'm using is also from Tamiya. There are other brands you can use, Mr. Hobby, Testers, or some store brands, but you have to test it before using it on your cars. Some might have stronger solvents than others and may not be suitable for these recycled plastics. After giving it a couple rounds of intensive shaking, I can start spraying. Oh, I almost forgot. Please wear a proper mask when painting. Your lungs are gonna thank you. Also, if you are painting indoors like I do, you can purchase one of these exhaust fans, otherwise your room is gonna be smoky. The film released by these spray cans is toxic, so it's important to protect your health as well as others living in your household. You don't have to go crazy for this first coat, just a few quick passes to make it look great. It doesn't have to be clean or smooth because I will be sanding all those down anyway. I let the primer dry for a few hours. After the initial primer coat, the flaws are more visible. As you can see, there are some mold lines on the body. Since the injection molds aren't perfectly sealed, extra plastic will try to squeeze out from the gap where two parts of the molding meet each other. Mold lines are pretty normal. All you have to do as a model builder is to remove them. If you don't remove them, they will stick out like a sore thumb. Before I start sanding, I usually mark off all the mold lines with an alcohol marker so I know where they are and I don't miss any of them. To remove the mold lines, I will start with the 600 grit sanding sponge. You can also use sandpaper, but this Tamiya sanding sponge is my favorite. It's a little more expensive than the sandpaper, but I'm able to sand the entire car with just a little piece like this. The sanding sponge is also great for all types of surfaces, flats, curves. Because it's a sponge, it's also easier to hold than a piece of sandpaper. There are some tiny mold lines hidden on the inside of the fenders. If you are a picky person, you may want to scrape those off with an X-Acto knife. The panel lines of this kit are not very deep, especially around the doors and the window trims, so they will need a little work. To make them deeper, I will use a tool like this panel line scriber to increase the depth of the existing lines. There are more expensive and better scribers out there, but this one has been working great for me, so I don't find the need to replace it yet. If you don't increase the depth of the lines now, then later on all the paint layers will fill up the lines, and the finished paint job will look flat and unrealistic. When I'm scribing, I use very light pressure and I keep my hand as steady as possible. I don't force my hand to move if the tool doesn't want to move. I used to use an X-Acto knife for scribing. You can use the back of your X-Acto knife to do it, but it's hard to control the direction and it's easy to slip out of the line. Scribing is something you really have to practice to get better at. The more you do, the more confidence you'll gain. I used to hate scribing because I would make mistakes and damage the body. I would have to fill the scratch with putty and sand it back down. But now I have a little more experience, I still hate scribing. But to be honest, scribing for car models isn't as bad or challenging as Gundam models or aircraft models, which the modelers have to create many more additional lines. I also like to use a scribing pen with a very sharp point for these rounded areas. This tool is also useful if the existing lines are too shallow to start with. It's easier to maneuver than the regular scriber. After the mold lines have been removed and the panel lines have been rescribed, I remove the rest of the primer and give it a good wash under the sink just to make sure it's free of dust. After that, I sprayed another coat of grey primer. This is still the same Tamiya spray can I used before, but this coat is gonna be a little thicker than the initial coat. Tamiya's primer is rather thin and smooth, so you don't have to worry about erasing small details with their primer. When using a spray can like this, just remember to shake it before spraying and keep your hand moving. Keep rotating the car, just keep it moving until the car is evenly covered. Their primer dries incredibly fast, usually in a couple of hours, but if you want to be safe, you can give it more time. I usually prime it before going to bed, and the next day is completely dry and ready. As you can see, all the mold lines are gone and the panel lines are looking nice and deep. So up to this point, the preparation of the body is complete. That means I can go ahead and move on to painting the car with the color I want, which I will be doing in the next episode. It's pretty easy, isn't it? If I can do it, you can do it too. That's it for this video. Thank you for watching. Hope you find it helpful. I will see you guys in the next one.